Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bishop E.W. Jackson, president of STAND, staying true to America's national destiny, with another edition of Bishop Jackson's Video Journal. Now, I come to you today with a very heavy heart for our country, because when we started a year ago a project called Stand Against Communism, I could never have imagined what would be going on a year later. But here we are. And it's heartbreaking, folks. For those of us who love this country, who honor this flag, who want the very best for our fellow citizens, it's heartbreaking to see what is going on in our country right now. And of course, you know exactly what I'm referring to. We have been beset with what I call the Communist Chinese Wuhan virus. And it apparently is a virus not only of the physical body, but a virus of the mind as well. And I say that because we know where it came from. We know that its implications, its transmissibility, its levels of contagion were hidden from us by the Communist Chinese regime. And yet we seem to have citizens who want to defend Communist China and attack President Trump, who is doing everything in his power to try to save American lives and save our economy and protect our constitutional freedoms at the same time. People can quibble about exactly what he's done and whether he did this, that, or the other quick enough, but nobody can question the man's motives, which is to save American lives and to save the American way of life. What are the motives of the Chinese, the Communist Chinese regime? I'll tell you what their motives are. Their motives are to destroy our economy, to destroy our way of life, and ultimately to destroy us if they can. And yet, when we raise this issue, people from the left want to scream, as one reporter accused President Trump when he she asked a question about, why are you making this a competition about how many tests have been done? And President Trump said, ask China. And she immediately came back with the implication that he was being racist. So let me just set the record straight, if I may. It is not about Asian people as a race. It is about a corrupt, dictatorial, tyrannical regime that is interested in subjugating the world if it can. Now, I've been studying this issue now for a while. I've been researching it. When we started the Stand Against Communism Coalition, I would mention communism and I'd sort of get a blank stare. As if when the Soviet Union collapsed, communism was over. Why are you talking about communism? What's the big deal? Yeah, I know socialism is being bandied about, but not communism. Well, folks, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Socialism is communism. Communism is slavery, and therefore socialism is slavery. And the fact of the matter is, Communist China is one big slave nation. The Chinese people are slaves to the communist regime. And when some of those slaves rose up at Tiananmen Square, they massacred them by the thousands. And yet you've got American citizens who want to say, as Bill Gates has suggested, as some of these other leftists have suggested, pointing out Communist China's responsibility and their culpability in this is a distraction. They've done some good things. Well, you know, people say, well, the devil does some good things. Yeah, he does some good things, all right, by accident. And when he does anything good, believe me, it's to bring the whole thing crashing down on your head. No, China's not done any good things. Everything they do is to prop up a brutal, dictatorial, tyrannical regime. And there's nothing good about that. So look, this is the issue that galls me more than any other. The left is always screaming about America being a nation of white supremacy and a nation of white privilege and all of this. It's complete nonsense. I've said this before, folks. I'll say it again in summary. It's not the skin, it's the sin. all human beings suffer from the same malady, which is that we are sinful, we are imperfect, and we sometimes do wrong, and sometimes that wrong involves the subjugation of others, and race has nothing to do with it. The same way that the British subjugated the Irish, and the northern Italians subjugated the southern Italians, and the stronger African tribes subjugated the weaker African tribes, and stronger Native American tribes subjugated weaker Native American tribes. It is a worldwide phenomenon. And to try to turn this into some racial thing as if certain people of a certain skin hue are bad and other people of another skin hue are good, and the people of one skin hue who are bad are always oppressors, and the people of another skin hue who are good are always virtuous victims. It's a preposterous way to look at life. But yet that's the way the left looks at our country. That's the way the left seems to look at the world. But when it comes to communist China, they don't seem to see any of that. So let me just for the record tell you all, folks, I can say this without equivocation, without apology, without compromise. Communist China is a racist state. It is, in my view, the most racist state in the earth today. Because if you study their history, you find that the communist Chinese, and the Han Chinese, but the ruling class in China, consider themselves to be superior genetically and physiologically and intellectually to all other peoples in the earth. And that as far as they're concerned, all other races are simply levels of animals far beneath the Chinese, who have a superior civilization because they are superior people. And we just saw one instance of that when in one city in China, restaurant owners operating a McDonald's closed it down saying no black people would be allowed. And McDonald's had to close the restaurant because, of course, they couldn't have international news reporting that a restaurant in China was saying, we don't allow black people here. But if you read any of the history and you read what historians and observers of China will tell you, this is a widespread attitude. And it is reinforced by the communist leadership. So here's my point. You want to condemn our country as racist, but you want to defend communist China, perhaps the most racist nation on the face of the earth? You have a hard time finding any American who would say to you that racism is good or right or acceptable. Oh yeah, there are some nutcases here like there are in other places. But it is no longer the cultural norm here. And there have always been people here who said racial classifications and discrimination is wrong. Always, throughout our history, those people have been here. But the cultural norm here is that you look at each individual as such, and you judge them by the content of their character, the competence of their ability, not the color of their skin. Not so in China. You can ask Europeans who have visited China, how many of them have gone through certain parts of China and heard people call them white devils. So folks, these leftists are going to defend a brutal, dictatorial, communist regime that does not even recognize human rights, that is, as we speak, arresting and incarcerating Christians, Uyghurs, Muslims, Buddhists, Tibetans. Anybody who does not toe the line is subject to persecution, incarceration, torture, and ultimately death. And yet you'll overlook that and you will attack our country? Well, folks, let me tell you why they do that. It is because they are more ideologically simpatico with the communist Chinese than they are with we Americans who believe in individual and personal liberty. They have more sympathy, more simpatico, more affinity for that than they do for us who believe in freedom. Just look at how they're using the coronavirus hysteria, cracking down on civil rights and violating people's human rights and lecturing Americans about how we ought to bow and we ought to, in the Chinese, when the emperors ruled China, coming before a Chinese emperor required that you kowtow. That's a Chinese term. And it meant that you had to bow your head and hit it against the stone floor 9 times, basically until you bleed or knock yourself out. That was showing your reverence and your respect for the Chinese emperor. And we've got people in our country now, mayors and governors, running around like little emperors, demanding that everybody kowtow to them, that you beat your head against a stone until it bleeds, in order to make them happy and satisfied with you as a decent citizen. Well, folks, this is straight out of the Marxist playbook. This is straight out of the Communist Manifesto. This is straight out of Rahm Emanuel's infamous dictum, never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, they aren't. They're using it for all it's worth. So I'm beginning to see now, when I mention communism, suddenly it has a relevance that it had not had until this situation hit. And now people realize communism is alive and well. And folks, are there any of you who doubt that China's spending the vast amounts of money they are spending on Confucius Institutes in our colleges and universities, on our major businesses, including having bought Smithfield Foods, a major supplier of protein, of meats to our country, having invested in so many ways quietly across this country, having bought up so much of our debt? Do any of you doubt that Communist China is behind the left in every way? That they're funneling money and resources into the Communist Party USA, into the Democratic Socialists of America, into all kinds of organizations and institutions? Do you really think that the $1.5 billion deal that they cut with Hunter Biden was about an acknowledgement of Hunter Biden's brilliance and ability to bring a return? It was about buying the Biden family, Joe Biden, lock, stock, and barrel. And they've been doing that all over our country, folks. And have no doubt that they're doing it right now. We spent $35 million on a Russian collusion hoax investigation. And frankly, we're ignoring, indeed, some of us, of our fellow Americans, becoming traitorous, becoming treasonous, and defending the biggest threat to the future of our country outside of those who reside here and don't happen to respect or love this constitutional republic. Outside of our internal threats here, the biggest threat we face is Communist China. And so, folks, we can't sit by and just let this happen. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that we go to war with Communist China. I hope that never becomes necessary. I hope that the regime is toppled from within. I hope that the people of China can live free. I hope that the Christians there get to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ all over China without fear of incarceration or torture or murder. It's not going to be the case under this regime. So the title of this little talk is, what should Americans do? What should Americans do? Well, look, I have 3 things that I would ask you to do, because here again, we talk and talk and talk, but I need you folks to take action. I need you to get involved. Here's number 1. I've started this coalition, the Stand Against Communism Coalition. I'm asking you to join me. Join me. We meet every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll give you the telephone number. I won't give it here because, of course, we will have infiltrators. We may already have them. But you can email me at ewj@standamerica.us. Very simple, ewj at standamerica.us and ask me for the call-in numbers, and I will happily give them to you. We just want to put a little bit of a buffer between ourselves and the far left infiltrators who are interested in undermining everything we're trying to do to preserve our great country. So that's number one. Number two, on July the 14th, in fact, at 2 o'clock on the 7th month, on the 14th day, symbolic of 2 Chronicles 7:14, we are holding a Stand in Prayer for America. In fact, we're holding Stand in Prayer for America rallies all over the country. That verse says, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will forgive their sin and heal their land. God says, I'll hear from heaven. I'll forgive their sin and heal their land. We need the land healed, and we need God to intervene in a profound and powerful way. And so we're calling the entire nation to prayer, but I need your help. We're going to do this in every town, every city, every county, every state across this country. We want to gather together in prayer in behalf of our beloved nation. Will you help me do that? Will you become a coordinator in your town, in your city, in your state, and help me to organize people for July the 14th? That's a Thursday at 2 p.m. By the way, it won't be 2 p.m. Eastern time. It's 2 p.m. because we want it to be the same time in every time zone to symbolize that we are implementing 2 Chronicles 7:14 and asking God to intervene in the life of our country and turn the hearts of our people toward him. So, folks, that's the second thing you can do. Here's the third thing. We have implemented something which we hope will become a movement. It's called the Oath, Citizens' Oath to the Constitution. The Citizens' Oath to the Constitution. You can find it on our website, standamerica.us. I've already signed it. You can go to our website. I'm asking you to do this. Not only sign it yourself, I'm asking you to do it with your family. Take it to your church. You pastors who are listening to me right now, take it to your church. September 17th is Constitution Day. That's the day that the Continental Congress voted to pass the Constitution. It took 2 years for the entire thing to be ratified. It became the law of the land. But September 17th is the day we mark. That's the day when Ben Franklin walked out of the Constitutional Convention at its conclusion, and Mrs. Powell met him and said, well, doctor, what have you given us, a monarchy or a republic? And he famously said, a republic, madam, if you can keep it. Well, here we are, 200 plus years later, keeping it, and we're going to keep it. So do it with your family. Do it in your church. You pastors, I'm going to hold a One Nation Under God service. It's something that Stan does from time to time, and we're asking pastors all over the country to do the same. Do readings from the Constitution. Begin to give people an appetite for understanding it. See, I'm convinced if the American people really knew how powerful that Constitution is as the most successful governing document in the history of mankind, we wouldn't have had all these little dictators and tyrants springing up across the country like Governor Rick Murphy of New Jersey saying, no, I didn't consider the Constitution when I passed my executive orders. That's above my pay grade. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you forgot. You took this little thing called an oath to the Constitution. Well, folks, I took it on August 4th of 1970 as a United States Marine. You veterans watching me right now, you've taken it yourselves. Any of you who have served in public office, elective office, or appointive office, you've taken it. And any of you watching me right now who are naturalized citizens, you've taken it. But those of us who are born here don't have to take it. And I don't want government to be ordering anybody to take any kind of oath. But I'm asking you as a citizen to voluntarily do this and use it as an educational opportunity. So when these politicians rise up and begin to violate our rights, we can remind them, look, I've taken a citizen's oath to that Constitution, and I intend to preserve, protect, and defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't want you to be an enemy, a domestic enemy of the Constitution. I want you to be a friend of the Constitution. And right now, you are transgressing it. Folks, our First Amendment rights are inviolate, and yet they've been violated. Our Second Amendment rights are not to be infringed upon, and yet they've been trampled. it is time for us as citizens to rise up and do what the Constitution implies in the preamble with the first three words: we, the people. The sovereignty of our nation is in our hands. It's not in the hands of Congress. It's not in the hands of the Senate. It's not even in the hands of the president. And I have immense respect for him. The sovereignty of the United States of America is in the hands of the people. And we delegate that sovereignty and that authority to our public officials and elected officials to serve us, not to rule over us, not to give us orders, but to serve us. They govern us with the consent of the governed. And so I hope you'll join this movement as citizens oath takers. Go to our website and print it out. Maybe have an oath-taking ceremony with your family. Again, do it in your church. Do it in your organization. I think we need a resurgence of constitutional governance in our country. And I think it begins not with politicians. It begins with we the people. So that's a third thing you can do. And I hope you'll do that. And listen, the last thing, obviously, that I hope that you will do is to just pray. Pray without ceasing for our country. We are in trouble in America. There's no question about that. And I think we've been in trouble for a while. But I'm convinced of this, that we are a resilient people, that we are a people who have been through crisis after crisis, crises that have threatened to bring our country down. But because we have been willing to stand, America is still standing. And I hope that you'll see on the website a pledge. It's not an oath, but a pledge. And I'll share with you the inspiration for that pledge. But it came out of something that God put on my heart as I was giving a speech. And I've said this all over this country, probably hundreds of times. If I have to be the last person in America standing up for that flag, if I have to be the last person standing up for that Constitution, if I have to be the last person standing up for our Judeo-Christian values and our way of life, I will never give up. I will never give in. I will never back down. I will never quit. I will do it until I breathe my dying breath. And I hope you feel the same way, because that's what it's going to take in order to hand down to our posterity a nation not only as good as the one that was bequeathed to us, but a nation that is even better, freer, stronger, more prosperous, more unified than we've ever been before. That's my vision for America. That's my dream. That's my hope. That's what I fight for. I believe it's embodied in our Pledge of Allegiance. One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, because I believe unless we are one nation under God, we can never be indivisible, and there will never be liberty or justice for any. So my friends, God bless each and every one of you. Stay in the fight. Don't quit. Don't forget, you can join me Monday through Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time on American Family Radio. It's live streamed, afr.net. I'd be happy to have you call in and talk to me there. And don't forget, we've got a call every Thursday, a conference call every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time for the Stand Against Communism Coalition. I also do a Tuesday call called the National Awakening Coalition Conference Call every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time. If you email me about any or all of that, we will send you the information. Again, it's ewj@standamerica.us. And my friends, don't ever forget this, because I live by these words. We cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.